Lee assured them that all the intelligence says that the Union Army's retreating. But Ed Johnson persists, and Richard Ewell relents. He sends off for the Confederate 2nd Corps Chief of Artillery, Armistead Law, and orders the guns back. Long is going to wake up about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning and sign off to have that artillery brought back. 24 guns that are necessary in the tip of the mule shoe. By the time that order found that Confederate battalion commander, Thomas H. Carter, Carter was 2 miles from here. He was down below the courthouse at Spotsylvania, and his horses were unharnessed and grazing. His men scattered and sleeping. He endorsed the order that it was 20 minutes before daybreak, and that he would get his guns moving as fast as possible. As much as Robert E. Lee did not want to engage in a foot race, the foot race that brought him here, he is now engaged in a foot race anyway. It is a question whether the Union 2nd Corps will arrive here first or the artillery will arrive in those earthworks out there. The morning is close. It is dark. It is diffused. The rain has led up to a fine mist. There is a ground fog that swells and fills this area. Visibility is about 35 to 40 yards in any direction. You can make out big things like tree lines, but all other details disappear. As the Union soldiers move forward at this very moment, 150 years ago, they are launching the biggest, seemingly surprise attack there is. 19,000 men billowing up through the woods. They have no artillery announcing their attack. They are coached that there will be no firing until they capture the Confederate line. And above and beyond all things, there will be no cheering until the line is taken. Stealth until the last moment. And as they advance, out of the fog, they meet the Confederate picket line disposed on this ridge, where we stand. And the first shots of May 12th that will touch off a firestorm that will consume us for the next 22 hours begins here. Those first shots will start off to your left, down around the Landrum house, just inside the grove of trees. Union soldiers, unable to determine the strength of their opponent, open fire. As you heard from Beth, Union soldiers have been told that they're attacking a ridge, and that is where the Confederates are located. We are on a ridge. This is a ridge with Confederates on it. And as Union soldiers swarm this spot, they begin to cheer. Across the way, Confederate soldiers have been vigilant all night long. They know what is coming. They anticipate the attack. They anticipate their artillery. They have tried heroically all night long to keep their powder dry for this moment. They don't know when this moment was coming, but they knew it was coming. And at this moment, 150 years ago, in the fog, in the mist, this entire ridge explodes in cheering and fire. It is so profound that at least one of the Confederates out here on this picket line insisted that it was as loud as a cannon. And he was convinced that the Union Army opened with artillery, because in the fog, the sound is magnified. He said that the fire was so close that he literally, instinctively grabbed his head because he was sure it had been shot clean off. Other Confederates along this ridge line can hear the fire, can hear the cheering, aren't exactly sure of how it all is coming together, but they also notice other phenomena. Over in the woods over here, to your left front, Confederate pickets cannot see the Union soldiers, but they see birds and owls come fluttering out of the woods en masse and cross over top of them. At this hour, that is like all nature gone awry. And for the more astute Confederates, it would have been a harbinger of what they had done just 1 year ago in Stonewall Jackson's flank attack, when they were like beaters to the hunt, driving the wildlife before them. Now, their roles are reversed. Union soldiers swarming this spot. Confederates falling back from this spot, or cut off from getting back to that main line. But it's the astute Union officers who realized seizing this spot came far too easy. This cannot be the objective. And as they peer into the fog and look into this morning, they discern that there is another ridge. And on top of that ridge is fresh turned dirt. They have not reached their objective yet. We need to get across this field. We need to get into that tree line. We need to do it quickly. In 1864, the Confederates across the way have been waiting for this moment. And for the Union soldiers here, they have just announced this moment. They're ready, and we have an open field to cover before we can get to them. This is a direful moment in this opening movement. Union soldiers, up to this moment, have been deeply distressed. One Union soldier said that they entered into the woods behind you with a funeral silence. And when they got on this ridge and they erupted, that was a cathartic release. And from here on out, everything is rushing with adrenaline and instinct. Officers have to work very quickly to stay ahead of their men and to keep a semblance of order. To proceed there. That is our objective right now. Ready? So with that, we are going to proceed in the footsteps of Winfield Scott Hancock's 2nd Corps.
Beth, what does that thing have for batteries?
Double A.
Double A? I brought some triple A's.
No. Very well.
Yeah. Here, that's her.
That's the all C. Shorter.
For the sticker. chilly in this ravine. Over there. Except it was in the fog.
It didn't matter. You shoot down.
Your feet are going to get wet here.
My feet are wet.
But to tell you, bring a spare pair of socks. I didn't think about it. Dry them out later. I'll try not to.
Beautifully, brilliantly executed assault.
How far is it back to the ridge? How far is it back to the ridge?
Back from that ridge to this one, you got about 200 yards tops.
Wow, not too far.
Nope. You only got a couple of seconds.
Wait till you.
No, really. I give up when we take a break.
I would never use those words with you ever. That was a brilliantly executed assault. Your alignment was perfect. Especially for a riot. But not that far off of what the experience might have been in those very footsteps that you just trod. Lieutenant John D. Black, 145th Pennsylvania, adjutant of the regiment, came across this ground 150 years ago before you. He wrote of this experience. He said that the men taking it for granted that that ridge back there, this was the enemy's works, and contrary to orders, opened the yell that always accompanies a charge, and they sprang forward. But on mounting the crest out there, the red earth of a well-defined line of works loomed up through the mist on the crest of another ridge, distant about 200 yards. And there was a shallow ravine between, which is where you are standing. This ravine is critical to their success. He wrote, "We moved quickly forward, and just as the command reached the bottom of the ravine, there belched forth works a volley of shot and shell that fortunately was trained on the ridge that we had just crossed." So this is where the main Confederate line will open fire on the Union attack. But they are not firing on the people in the middle of an open field. They are firing at that ridge back there. So the bullets go right over our heads. and nobody gets hit down here. Now, 19,000 Union attackers screaming their heads off with a demonic fury. How could the Confederates miss? The fog, the mist, the diffused atmosphere. They cannot see it. They can hear it. And what they heard was on that ridge. And as it ventures down into the bottoms, the grounds around us consume it and mute it, so that the Confederate doesn't fire at a visual target, they fire at an audible target. And they miss this opportunity. That shot that they have been husbanding all night long, waiting for this. The critical mass of the first shot, and it has gone awry. It is down here that General Barlow is again going to infuse his men and order them forward as fast as possible before they get a second round, before they get a chance to adjust and realize their mistake. Life is in the essence of getting up this slope as fast as possible 150 years ago. At this moment, Union color bearers step to the fore and try to vie with each other to get their colors on top of this ridge, on top of the Confederate earthworks first. There are at least 3 color bearers that are in a dead heat, in a full sprint, heading up this ridge, trying to make sure that they are the first. Regimental commanders are infusing them and their men, not only to stay with the colors, but make sure no one gets in front of New Jersey. Make sure no one gets ahead of Pennsylvania. No one gets ahead of New York, including the other color bearers. So as they roll from this spot, General Barlow will have every single officer under his command repeating his order. Forward! Double quick! Charge! With that, this bottom is going to empty out. The enemy awaits, but salvation is also there. To stay where you are is death. The only way you succeed to tell about it is if you capture that hill. 150 years ago, that was the life and death decision of this very moment. And the Confederates are furiously reloading, waiting for this group to come out of this bottom. That's what awaits us. Onward.
Seems to me it might be safer back here in this mountain.
He's good.
Yeah, that's the one that Kyle.
Heading toward my grandfather's position, great-grandfather. The Louisiana boys are fixing to get overrun. The ridge is ahead. There are the earthworks in front of us. Confederate earthworks would be along here. Allegheny Johnson's regiment, Louisiana, Arkansas. Sunrise coming up. No artillery present at this time. They were miles back to be brought forward. 19,000 Union troops advancing up off the ridge into the breastworks here.
His wife, what's her name? Estelle. We went to that dinner downtown fun night last week during the road. She clung on me about 2 years ago. What did I do?
Two lines of earthworks here. One up back by the canyon area here, one lower.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
The Bloody Angle will be off to the left further.
It'd be interesting. He takes it a little hardcore serious sometimes. I'm very serious about it, but I don't. Yeah. That's true. Good old Joe.
Pretty here this morning. Birds singing. Witchy. Red-eyed vireos.
Hey, look.
Here, or did you get married afterwards?
I don't know.
You know how old he was?
I have to. He enlisted in '61, so he'd been in it the whole time.
But how old was he?
I don't know. Pull up Ancestry, look on the computer.
Yeah, but so you're talking about Park Schools. Yeah, but they went they did first.
Where's he going to talk from?
But yeah, it was kind of a filler day. I wish I did. They set up the cartoon boats across the river and all that. But I heard they did a good job of it. They used modern boats. They really should have had replica.
What?
If they would slid up there.
Open with the big leg. Yeah, she was out there all day yesterday. I mean, she was on a hike. She kept up with her.
That doesn't. And plus, they're not very deep anymore. Build those things. So if you see the old pictures of a lot of battles, they would build them up. Yeah. Well, well, if you see anything,
So you're going to talk from She's going to come down here and talk.
What are we doing?
Walking along the East Salient now. Excuse me. I'll put in front of me, please.
I figured we at least get some oatmeal cookies.
What do you think she's going to do about it? 1 a.m.?
Incident command post.
After the 8-hour hike yesterday, you could have gone home, baked several batches.
Several batches was a little too much for me last night. And yeah, I had these grand visions that surely I would be able to bake some for the hike. And then I realized there's no way I can get home at 10 o'clock at night and bake cookies when I have an all-day hike the next day.
Well, what was Frank doing?
So I had to do them yesterday.
What was Frank doing? He could have baked them.
That's a good point. I think that Frank could have baked.
I'd love to see that.
Although if you ever ask Frank about his cooking abilities, I have never tasted anything that Frank has made. But I've heard some horror stories told by Frank himself, and I'm not sure that you want him to bake a good cookie.
About his wife, she's going on over.
What was that?
His wife probably has a
That is true. His wife, I have not had her cookies, but she makes some excellent lemon bars. So
They're awesome.
what more could you ask? Right.
Lemon bars.
Real? All right. We're all here. You're standing. You're good. Okay, just checking. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I told you payback would be coming.